Hi, Siddharth. Welcome to Conversations on Data.
Hey, Avish, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
The pleasure is mine. So we've been planning this for a while, and I'm very happy that it is finally happening. So there are five categories of questions that I want to get into. So I want to start with your career in financial and data analytics. Then I want to jump to financial reporting and risk management. Then the hot topic, technology and automation in finance. Then we move on to more personal things, so mentorship and learning. And finally, something as a takeaway for the listeners, which is personal growth and passion projects that you work on. So we'll go in this sequence.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Excellent. So first things first, could you share with us a little bit about your journey in finance and regulatory reporting? How did it begin? And
Oh,
what inspired you to specialize in this specific area?
for sure. So I was born and raised in New Delhi, India. So I'm a Delhi kid. Um, I did BCom honors from SRCC, and thanks to my father, I was able to come to the US in the year 2006 for my MBA in financial management. The reason I did my MBA in financial management because I wanted to be an investment banker. But thankfully, before I started pursuing that aggressively, I get to see the kind of life they have, the amount of stress they take. Yeah, of course, it comes with a lot of money, but the amount of stress and the number of long hours, they were not meant for me. So that's when I chose to do a CPA, which is equivalent to CA in India. And that's how my journey began in accounting and reporting. So it was never planned for me to work in banking. It just happened. And funny enough, my dad, he has been a banker his entire life. So when I tell someone that I'm a banker, my dad was a banker, so they by default assume that I was pushed into it. But that was not the case. It just happened that so for the first few years, while after I did my MBA, I work for a local CPA accounting firm here in New York. Then I work for like a wireless company here, and then I moved to Canada again, thanks to my parents. So I moved to Canada, immigrated there. That's when I started my career in banking. I worked for Bank of Nova Scotia. Started in credit risk as a contractor, then moved into um, subsidiary reporting, which included all in, right? We were doing the accounting, posting journal entries, making the financial statement, filing tax returns, whatnot. And from there, I was there for about 4 years, and then I got a role as an AVP in MUFG. That was in 2015, and for 9 years, I have been with MUFG. And since you asked me like what inspired me to specialize in this area, you may be surprised to know that I did not even know that there is something called regulatory reporting. I was only aware of accounting, financial
Right.
reporting, and something called SEC reporting. But when I was introduced to this role, I saw, what we do here at MUFG, primarily dealing with the regulators, different type of regulators, and we report financial data, banks data to them. So I found it interesting because I have already done a reporting role in Canada. I already had degree in accounting and finance. So I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. And it was totally worth it.
Excellent. Thank you for being so candid, Siddharth. And to this point, I meet all these students, and they are doing SAFE level 1, 2. And it's interesting where you say that I wasn't quite sure, what exactly the roadmap is going to be. I'm not saying you were not working hard. I'm sure you were. It's just that you were open to opportunities, if I may say so, right? Do you think now students have this attitude that they want a lot of clarity in terms of what they want to do? And probably they're overthinking it rather than just sort of sticking to one step at a time and doing it?
Yes, I agree. And I mean, I wouldn't just put students in a bad light. I think it's human nature. We all overthink.
Right.
We all have a destination, a goal where we want to reach, and unfortunately we get so fixated with that we miss forest for trees. We are just focused on one thing. Again, I'm not saying it's not the right approach. You have to have a goal, but your goal is meant to just give you a direction, right? You have to focus on the process. So for example, let's say you're going from point A to point B, you will not have a straight path. I did not have a straight path, right? I had to sometime takes, make a U-turn, go in a right direction, left direction. So I think, anybody, right, whether you are in school, you're just starting your career, or even, at 10, 15 years, 20 years down in your career, you should always be open to learning new things, trying new things. And that's what I did. Like I said in the beginning, I did not have any plans to, do CPA, right? I wanted to be an investment banker, but I wasn't fixated that, by hook or crook, I have to be there, because I had the foresight to know what it would cost me, in terms of my mental health. So that's why, and I knew it's not for me. There are people who do great as investment bankers. I know I couldn't. So I was happy to, try something new, and I'm so glad that I did it. And again, I'll go back to, 20, 25 years back. So in early 2000s, if you remember, right, there was a big dot-com bubble, right? Everyone wanted to be a software engineer. Most of the people I knew in my family and outside of it, their kids were trying to be the software engineers. My parents, they wanted me to do the same. And on day one, I knew, it's not meant for me. I couldn't, right? I'm more of like a numbers person. I like number crunching. So that's why, stick to taking commerce after grade 10th. And again, I think it was one of the best decisions of my life I took. So coming back to the question, yeah, there is nothing wrong to be to have a goal, but then a person should always be cognizant of the fact that if that doesn't work, you should be willing to try something new.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Absolutely. What are the skills that you feel are crucial for someone looking to build a career in financial analysis, reporting, and risk management?
Sure. So I can give some basics, which again, I think it applies to all the careers. So first of all, you have to have strong knowledge of your basic concepts. Since I'm on the finance and accounting side, I can give some examples. Like, you should know your accounting 101, debit credits, the valuation models, discounted cash flow, whatnot, how you recognize the revenue. So all those things you have to have very strong knowledge, especially if you are in school, you are still studying. Don't study just from the mindset that, hey, I just have to clear an exam or get a certain score. I can tell you from my experience, what you learn in school, it will stay with you as long as you are in the industry. I still go to the basics of accounting even after finishing grade 11th, like in 2001. Whenever we are doing a new product assessment, right? I have to give it a thought, hey, how the assets will be impacted, how the contingent liabilities will be impacted, so on and so forth. So since my basics are good, I'm able to make, informed decisions. So certainly, your basics are really important. So learn as if, you would need it forever. Second, you talk about risk. So risk is like really wide, and at least like, in the initial years of my career, I did not know anything about risk except at a very high level, right? So there are different type of risk management. There is a credit risk management. There is an operational risk management, market risk management. So each one has their own skill sets. So for example, if you want to be in market risk, it's at some point in time, it would help if you have a designation of financial risk manager. If you are in credit risk, an MBA would do, even a CPA, CPA would help. So, I mean, with time, you learn new things, right? And now with education evolving so much, there is no one answer I can give you, like how you build your career by doing in particular, like one particular thing. So yeah, bottom line, get your basics right. And next thing which I would certainly recommend is communication skills. And I cannot stress it enough. I know people, I have seen a lot of people in my life, like, really smart, but unfortunately they cannot communicate. So if you cannot communicate people, you cannot convince them to buy your idea. And from my own personal experience, as you move further up in your career, your communication skills, especially your verbal communication skills, they take precedence over your technical skills. Technical skills are still important because you still need to understand what you are doing. But then at the same time, you should be able to explain it to others. So build on, try to build on your communication skill, which you can do in multiple ways. Participate in, debates, participate in group discussion, things of that nature, practice it alone, practice talking alone. And at one point in my career, like very early on, that's how I practiced for my interviews, just had a video camera on and I was recording myself practicing, and I was able to notice, the mistakes that I was making, which I was not even aware of that I'm making those mistakes. And that's how I learned. And again, something basic which we actually talked about a few minutes back, like being, open-minded, willing to learn new things, right? And learning from your mistakes. Um, Again, I've seen lots of people who think, if they make a mistakes, it's end of the world. It's not, right? It's never going to be like that. And there's no shame in not knowing stuff. I mean, I don't know so many things, even at my current role, I learn so many things new, even though I have been at this job for like, what, 9 years now. There is no shame that you do not know something. The problem is when someone pretend that they know, or if they are unwilling to learn what they don't know. That's when I think a problem happens. So be open-minded, be ready to learn, and learn from your mistakes. I think that's really important.
Perfect. Moving on. So how has your project management experience complemented your work in financial reporting and risk management?
That's a great question. So my work in the reporting itself, a lot of it I learned, through education, through my bachelor's, master's, CPA. But projects is something that I did not study ever. And a lot of that, the learnings, in project management, those are intangibles, right? Obviously, what financial statements are, what assets are, what liabilities are. But when you're working in project, you're working with lots of variables, lots of dynamics, which includes people, which includes system, which includes technical enhancements. So most of the stuff that I know today is because of the fact that I worked on the projects. So it helped me, expand my knowledge base, look at other areas in the organization, how my work is complementing there, and vice versa, how their work is affecting us. And obviously, when you talk to people from different places, different areas in an organization, you learn from them, right? You learn from their experiences. And obviously, the other intangible soft skills, like, your communication skills, being able to work in teams, being able to handle conflicts, how do you handle ambiguities. So all those are, like, transferable skills that I was able to learn by working on projects. And once, I succeeded on a couple of projects, that gave me the confidence that, hey, if I can work with people from different areas in the organization, people from different backgrounds, I can also, lead a team. And that's what I have been doing right now in my career, in my team, in my company for what, like 5 years, over 5 years, almost 5 years now.
Got it. I always tell students that you have to create opportunities. One, you have to seize them. You will miss a few of them. Don't miss too many of them. And also, sometimes you have to create opportunities. So when you tell me how much it helped you in terms of your project management experience, helping you maybe in your current active role, a lot of students might be cynical and say, but what if you don't get the opportunity? And my argument to that is, why don't you create it for you? Not everything in life is handed to you. So would you even go to the extent to say that finance professionals or a student pursuing a career in finance should also have like a wider skill set? Of course, you need to have the one-on-one, like you said earlier, but is it also important to have a bigger, like a 5 mile visibility of maybe other functions in other area? Or is that something that will naturally come over time?
Ideally, if someone can be aware of the fact that I have to expand my horizons, see other things, and touching base on what we discussed earlier, don't be too fixated on one thing. It's good to have a goal, good to have a vision, but then always keep your eyes and ears open and see what's out there. that will help you, see the opportunities and then you pursue them. Yes, it's possible that you may not succeed in all the opportunities that you wanted to. It has happened to me forever. But I think if you are, again, open-minded, keep your vision wide, there will be more opportunities out there than you would see if you are just focused on one thing. And I'll share a personal experience with you, which again, I did not know back in the days will help me tremendously. So when I started my career at Scotiabank in 2012, my first job was in credit risk. It was like a reporting admin kind of role. And I liked that area. And my goal was to go into credit adjudication, where we approve loans or give our feedback. So I still remember in the Christmas holidays of 2012, when I think most of the world was celebrating holidays, I was taking internal courses, right? The trainings to get a role in credit risk next year. So come 2013, it did not happen. 14 did not happen. 15, I got a job at MUFG. Again, it was not in credit risk. 15 did not happen. 16 did not happen. So 5 years, right? In 2017, come January 2017, my team was tasked with a new liquidity report. It's a complicated report, like one of the complicated things that we have done here at MUFG. And my manager, I heard him, talking to his counterparts, and I keep hearing these words, liquidity reporting and whatnot. And I asked him one day, I said, "Hey, Jeff," his name is Jeff Sherwood, great guy, love him. Um, I asked him, "Hey, Jeff, you always keep talking about this liquidity reporting. Can you share something?" Then he engaged me in that project. And believe it or not, when I started talking to people from technology, from market risk, from treasury, all the things that I learned, 5 years ago, which was, hey, what is a multi-purpose facility? What is wrong way risk, right way risk? What are the risk mitigants? What are collaterals? Every single thing that I learned 5 years back, came to me. And whatever they were talking, every single thing made sense. And my manager and I, we were able to do really well on that project. And that gave a lot of visibility. Like, people knew that, hey, there is this guy named Siddharth who knows liquidity reporting. And that again took my career to another level in the bank, both in terms of like a recognition as well as financial compensation. So yeah, I mean, keep seeking opportunities. Whether you get it or not, it's not in your hands, but keep seeking it and have an open vision. And that's what I
Right.
recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a very nice way of putting it. So in this section, Siddharth, I want to talk about, dive a little deeper into financial reporting and risk management. So could you tell us some key challenges involved in regulatory reporting for global banks?
Sure. So regulatory reporting, by definition, it's for regulators, right? Those are the main stakeholders. Now, depending on which country you are in, your regulator can be a single regulator. It can be more than one. Some of the challenges that I have seen is this environment is ever evolving. Every single time there is a financial crisis, the banks will be forced to comply with new requirements. There will be new reports. Your existing reports will modify. So it's always evolving, and you have to be on the top of it. And especially, when the new regulations come out, or when a new report is being developed by the regulator, the regulations are not final on day one. Sometimes, it take months, and sometimes it's take even years. So just as an example, we started filing one report, I think in 2020, and even now we get new regulation or enhanced regulations. So you can appreciate how much time, money, and hours and resources you have to invest in keeping track of all these changes and then developing them and implementing them. So you always have to be on your toes when it comes to regulatory reporting. For global institutions, or even domestic institutions which are big in size, by default, by the nature of their work, they are complicated in terms of the products they offer, the systems they use, both production systems, the data warehouses, how you consume the data, right? And then that helps you like appreciate that how much goes in, right? Whenever there is a new regulatory requirement, how many people have to come together to work on something, right? And from my perspective, like since we are the consumer of the data that is generated in the bank, and then in a sense we are the face of bank, when it comes to dealing with the regulators. So we have to be, again, always aware that what is changing, whether it is an internal change or an external change, and how it is going to impact the regulatory reporting. And this is all in addition to the business as usual BAU activities you have to do, which is to get your reports out on daily basis, timely and accurately.
How different is the US and Europe stance on this? I would assume that Europe would be much more stringent and stricter when it comes to this.
I mean, I have not worked for any European bank, and that's not like, my area of work, so I cannot comment too much on it. I have like, done like regulatory reporting at my job in Canada. Now, I don't know what was the reason. The amount of reporting that we were doing, it was not as comprehensive as we were doing here. So for example, in Canada, the reporting that my team did, it was once a quarter only, that's it. But here we are doing like daily reporting, weekly reporting, monthly, quarterly, annually, once in a 5 year. So yeah, I don't know what's
Got it.
the differences.
All right. So how do you see regulatory requirements like BCBS 239 influencing the future of regulatory reporting?
Sure. So those of the audience who do not know what BCBS is, it stands for Basel Committee for Banking Supervision Standard 239. And it has a framework of 14 principles, primarily around the data aggregation, data accuracy, timeliness, controls, and governance. So in terms of impact or the influence, it's costly, right, to implement those changes. But unfortunately, if you are in banking, you're operating as a bank, you have no option but to comply with it. So it's a bullet that you have to bite whether you want it or not. And the people, who work in regulatory reporting, like myself and my team, we have to act as an SMEs, subject matter expert, right? The job has significantly evolved from the time when people were just preparing the reports and shipping them out to the regulator. Now you have to actually understand how every single change is impacting us, right? How would we make changes? So that's why it is. So that's why, when I said earlier that it's important to get your basics right, that's when it comes to help. It helps you become a subject matter expert. Then the next thing is, we'll touch upon it later, but since we are on the topic, so with the help of technology, you are able to eliminate a lot of manual processes. But on the flip side, you cannot 100% rely on the technology itself, because any technology is as good as the people who uses that, right? So you have to understand that data. If it doesn't make sense, we cannot assume that, hey, if it is automated, right, if it is coming from a system, it must be accurate. That's unfortunately not true many times. So you should have, a proper framework that you can escalate and work on remediating those issues. And all that, they does take time. It's no longer like a 9 to 5 job anymore. Then obviously, if you're not complying with the requirements from international supervisory agencies or your local supervisory agencies, it does come with a cost. It can cost you financially, it can cost you reputationally. So, and banks, or, I think the companies in general, they are very mindful of keeping a good reputation, right? And obviously, the more supervision you have, there will be, you are always actually under oversight of people, not just people who are internal. For example, not just your internal control testing teams or the internal audit, but also the external regulators. So you will always be hounded by them. They're sometimes, they are asking like same thing, and you have to explain it to multiple people. So you cannot get frustrated. I know it's not easy to not be frustrated by having to say same thing over and over, but that's the nature of the job. And lastly, you cannot work in silos anymore. You cannot just focus on doing what you are doing, because everything that you do is either impacting other areas in the organization or you are getting impacted by them, right? The data that my team is generating, it should be reconcilable to the data that other teams are preparing to. So if it's not, then obviously there is something wrong, and that's what the regulators look for, that why A is not matching with B. You have to have reasonable explanations to those.
Got it. So last question in this section, could you also walk us through some best practices for ensuring accurate, timely regulatory reporting? You mentioned that it is important. I would also like to know, what are the best practices that you can follow?
So first of all, when you get the data, you have to understand what data is, right? And that helps you to determine how it will be reported. And once you understand the data, and it's not easy, sometimes we are dealing with some products and they are like so complicated that in the first meeting you wouldn't understand it. So keep on asking until you understand what you are going to be doing with it. So that's really important, to understand your data in its raw form. Then you have to make sure that the control framework you have at different data hops, all the way starting from where the data is generated, that is in the front office systems, as it comes to the data aggregation tools, which is generally the data warehouse. And then when it eventually comes downstream to you, who would be the end user of that information. So there has to be a sound control where you are able to trace the transactions from top to bottom and bottom up. And if you find any data quality issue, then your control environment helps to escalate it and then get it remediated. Investing in technology and people, it's very important. Obviously it does cost money, but it has long-term benefits. It helps you eliminate the inefficiencies. You can constantly work on improving the quality of the data, right? And understand if your current processes are redundant, and how you can improve on them.
Got it. All right. So next section, we want to talk about technology and automation, something very close to me. Um, so first things first, how has technology, so Axiom, SL, Reg Reporter, Oracle Financial Services, analytical applications, how have these transformed the way regulatory reporting is conducted?
So Havish, I am from the generation where we use technology from very early on in our careers. Like the most primitive technology I have used is an electronic typewriter, and that was once a quarter to write to type a check. But I talk to my colleagues I have people in my team who have been with the industry in the industry for like 35, 40 years, right? And they tell me back in the days they used to prepare these 30 pages regulatory report manually. So you can understand how challenging it must have been to first input the data and then making sure your reports are not out of balance. So obviously with the advancement of technology, lot of manual processes have been taken care of, so you don't have to spend too much time in compiling the data. Yeah, it's a one-time investment. You have to build your logic to make sure the data is coming accurately, but then in the long term it saves you a lot of time. But that being said, despite of the fact that a lot of data consumption is automated, you still cannot get away with the human involvement. Like there are parts where you have to involve it. When you're doing a variance analysis, at least the technology is not advanced at this time, that where it can tell you which. So let's say there's a variance in loan between two quarters, right? The technology is not advanced that it can tell you that, hey, these customers are causing the loan variance. You still have to investigate. Same thing with the reconciliation. If the balances are not reconciling, the investigation piece, it is still manual. So on the face of it, it seems like the data compilation is automated. So the job must have become easy, but it's not the case. And certainly remember it, because when I interviewed at MUFG, the first thing my manager told me in an interview that, hey, we use this system called Reg Reporter for our report preparation, and the reporting is automated. And I was like so happy. I said it must be a really easy job then. If your data is like, report is automated, what you have to do. But when I actually started doing the work, and then I was like, no, that's not the case. Your piece is automated. You still have to do like, a lot of analytics manually. Yeah, and one more thing, which we have been able to make use of is, depending on, how good your reporting application is and how good your vendor is, you can get rid of a lot of manual adjustments, that you have been doing for years. So in my team, so for example, when we migrated from one application to the other, and for confidentiality reasons, I cannot share too much details. So we were able to automate like, a lot of adjustments, which we were like, forced to do. And it did save a lot of time. And all that time, now we have been able to spend in improving the quality of the data we report, and then focus on, improving our processes by looking at more manual adjustments that can potentially be automated in future.
Got it. If only I had $1 for every time my client told me that the data is clean and the process is automated. But yeah, I think we've all been there. So we know there are a number of tools, Siddharth, and what steps do you take when assessing technical enhancements for existing systems, especially when new financial products are launched?
Sure. So there is no one size fits all kind of strategy, right? When it comes to your impact assessments, it depends on multiple reasons, like where the change is happening. So I have few basics that again I learned from more experienced people before me. That some of the things I look for is, first of all, I understand what is changing, where it is changing, and how it is going to impact the flow of data from point A to point B, and then how will we consume that data. So let's take an example. Again, it's the hypothetical example. So let's say company, a bank, they start transacting interest rate swaps in Indian rupees, right? INR. So now, as someone in regulatory reporting, let's say myself in this case, so what I would be interested in knowing is, first of all, okay, what is changing, right? Which is, okay, my bank is going to transact interest rate swaps in INR. Now, the next thing would be, are my front office system where these swaps are booked, are they compatible to book the trades in INR? If not, who is going to make those changes? The second thing would be, how would that data be consumed in the data warehouse? Will data warehouse need to make any changes? And then depending on the yes or no, then third is, okay, fine. If dataware is able to consume the data with or without any changes, how will that data come to me? Would I have to make any changes, right, in receiving the data in my applications? Once I know the answer, then the last step would be, how will that get reported, right? So for that, we need to go through the instructions and make sure that, hey, these interest rate swaps in INR, first of all, are they reportable? If yes, where would they all go? Now, is our logic for data consumption in a particular report, is it already comprehensive enough to consume transactions in a new currency altogether? If not, then you work with your internal IT team, which is supporting your application, to build those things. So you see, I mean, it's like a process. It's like a decision tree. If A happens, you have to do B. If B happens, you have to do C, things of that nature. And vice versa. If it's a regulatory change, then you have to change this approach upside down. So, right, first you see, hey, where will this data be reported in my report? Am I already receiving this data? If not, who is going to provide me the data? What changes they have to make? So there is like a whole slew of actions you have to take. You have to engage the system owners at different hops, both upstream, sometime downstream. And then obviously, then there are projects which get instituted, you get funded. Then you have to have business requirement documents, testing scripts. Then you do the testing. There are defects. Then you resolve those defects. And then once everything goes live, when the transactions go live, they start getting booked. Then you have to monitor them for a certain amount of time. depending on how complicated the product is, or how much is the volume, to make sure that your data flow is from end to end is accurate and you're generating the accurate reports. So it's interesting. It's challenging, but it is interesting. And like I said a while ago, that's how I have learned, all that I know.
Got it. Could you also share some examples of how you have automated data feeds and processes in your current role?
Sure. So when I first started this job in 2015, like one of the first projects that I worked on was to automate, the reporting of guarantees. So we have a report where you report to the regulators the data based on the ultimate risk, where your loan exposures or your commitment exposures are standing. And this would it would help you understand, like how complicated the reporting could be. So let's say if I have a loan to a customer in US, but it is guaranteed by a customer in UK. So I still have to report the data in US, but eventually it's on ultimate risk basis. So the exposure has to eventually be reported in UK too. So now when your system is showing that, hey, my customer is in US and your data has to be reported in UK, how many transformations you have to do, from how many multiple places you have to receive the data. And that's not the only complication. Now you may have guarantee from 3 guarantors in UK. How do you report the exposure, 70, 20, 10? How do you break it down? If your guarantors are in 3 different countries, like how do you break it down? $100 exposure, you are reporting $70 in UK, $20 in India, $10, somewhere else. So that required a lot of discussions with the people in operations, people who do the booking, people who own these operational systems, and then obviously folks in the technology, to bring them all together, decide an approach, how we are going to how do we going to handle the nuances, and then obviously build the logic, perform the testing. That was like I said, it was my first project, and it's been incredible, right? It's been like 8-9 years now almost, that we have been able to report our this guaranteed data as accurately as it could be. And at one point in time, I vividly remember we were making lots of adjustments, and now the volume is much less, not even 10% of the adjustments we were doing back then. Another example I can give you is so one of the legacy reporting tools that we were using until a few years ago, it would give us a daily exception report. Like if your data has failed to load for a certain transactions, what your key data elements, KDEs, are missing. And then you investigate, you adjust for it, you get it fixed, etc. But it had its limitations. It would only give you the exceptions for a certain number of exceptions, right? Or missing key data elements. So when we migrated to a new platform, we did leverage of the existing logic from the legacy application, but then we expanded the scope. So obviously, the number of insights we have now has significantly increased. And not every, data exception you have will be a true positive, in a sense that we are just making sure that if any KD is missing, it should be notified to us. Whether or not it's usable, that's a totally different story. We have our own processes, to do those researches. So these are the things, we have been able to do to leverage of something which was already there, and then expand it to, to widen the scope of our analytics.
Got it. Okay, so now that the technical part is over, I want to jump to mentorship and learning in this section. So you've authored a study guide for CPA exam candidates. What motivated you to pick up that project?
Yeah. So before we go into that, Havish, something I would like to share, that my journey has been incredible. Like the things I have been able to do, I did not even know that I have the skills, right, to do those things. And tutoring people, or writing this study guide was one of them. So where it all began, when I was studying for my CPA in 2010. I think I finished my CPA in 2011. So between 2010 and 2011, I was very much focused on studying for the exam. And my goal was to pass it. No matter what, I have to get it done in one shot. Because I did not know if I have the patience to take the same exam again. So I did what I could as best as I could to clear the exams in one shot. So I have a mentor from my MBA. So she had a student who was struggling to pass like the last exam. And my mentor, she pushed me. She's like, hey, you have to help him. And I did not have the confidence to teach someone, because I myself was just taking the exam, right? Have the 22-year-old kid, right? I did not have the confidence to tell someone, hey, this is how you should be studying. But she persisted. She was like, no, you have to help him out. Whether he passes or not, that's a different story, but you have to do it. So I tried to share what I had learned in the process with him. Thankfully, luckily he passed, and then I was a little more confident. Then there were a few more people I was able to help again, share what I had learned, my strategies and everything. And then I identified that like the content of the CPA itself is not difficult, right? But the way exam is structured is you have to consistently study, and you always have to prepare for the curveballs, right? So I had some methods to study, right? And that's what, then I was like, okay, let me just put it down in the form of a guide and share it with others. So I worked on it, and I went to a few publishers. They were like, okay, we will charge you X amount of money. And I was like, no, I'm not paying money to share what I have learned. And they wanted me to expand the scope of it and make it like a study review material. Obviously, I did not have the time to create a study material of my own, especially when there were like much better study material outside. And then I was like, okay, let me just create a website. I created a website and posted the study guide over there, and distributed it for free. So that's how the transition from studying CPA, helping people one on one, and then creating the study guide, that's how that journey happened.
Got it. Quite amazing. Um, so how important is mentoring and coaching to you in your professional journey, and how do you approach it with your team or people outside of your core team?
Hmm. So first thing first, like personally for me, there is nothing more satisfying or gratifying than helping others. Whatever I have learned in my life, that's because someone took an initiative to coach me, right, to mentor me, and I want to do the same thing for others, right? Personally, I mean, I like coaching people who are either early on in their career or who are just in school, and I want them to learn from my mistakes, right? The mistakes I have made, so that they can they can avoid making it. Um, I have few perspective, like why I focus on coaching people than anything else, or mentoring them. Like very long back in my life, I had this realization, right? The amount of time I have on this planet is extremely finite. So whatever I have learned, whatever I learn, if I keep it all to myself, whether I like it or not, one day it's all going to go waste, right? No one would be able to make use of it. So why not share it with others, help them grow. Secondly, if I use an analogy, right, all the scientific developments we see around us, it's because someone shared their knowledge, right? Had those scientists, discoverers, inventors kept their discoveries to themselves, we as a society would not be here, right? We would, who knows, where we would, where we are, who knows where we would be. So these are the things that helps me stay focused on sharing my knowledge. um Something which I recently realized by talking to many people who are fresh out of college. So they reached out to me on LinkedIn. I think how they do it to other people. And one of the things which I hear from them is that I am either the only person who respond to them, or like one of the very few people, and that always surprises me, right? Like how much time does it take to reply to somebody's message who is asking you for an advice? Yeah, I get it. I may not be in a position to help someone with a finding them a job, but at least I can share my perspective, or at the least, hear them out, right? In many cases, that's the only thing people are looking for, someone to hear them out. So that being said, like my approach to coaching people or mentoring someone, I mean, I don't really have a specific process. It's like, if someone, let's say, is outside of my team, or let's say outside of my organization, right? If some kid reaches out to me on LinkedIn, first thing is, try to hear them out, see what they have been doing. If they need a specific advice, let's say applying for a job in a particular organization, share your perspective, how should they be approaching it. If they need help with, reviewing their resume, I help review their resume. If someone need help with interviewing, right? How should I interview? I have done, like, mock interviews with people, something similar in this format, doing it virtually, sharing with them that, what I would do in their situation, or giving them some tips how they can, they can make improvements. For people in my team, this is something which I always do. Whenever I have a new hire, whether it's a full-time employee or a contractor, obviously they get report specific training by other members on my team. But I always make sure that within their first month, I sit with them, give them an overall view of, what we do, like end-to-end process, how we are getting the data, what systems are we using, how those systems are consuming the information, and how we will use that information not only for our reporting, but to share the data with other people in the organization. So I mean, that's what I feel. It helps people, admire the amount of work we do, the contribution that we make, not only for our team, but also, in the organization at a higher level.
Got it. Final question for this section. What advice would you give to students and new graduates who are aspiring to enter the field of finance, risk management?
So something similar to, what we talked in the beginning. You have to get your basics right. Understand the basics of, accounting, the basics of finance. And when I was at that age, when I was in grad school, or in the grade 11, grade 12, I did not know that whatever I'm learning today would stay with me even until now, right? So, like, mark my words, whatever you are learning, it's going to stay with you for a very long time. And as I said, like in the beginning, right, even after 22, 23 years, I still go to debit. Debit should be always equal to credit, right? Or assets has to be equal to liabilities plus equity. So important to get your basics right. Then, again, build on your communication skills. Really important, because if you can communicate well, people can trust you, right? They can buy into your ideas. And obviously, it complements your technical skills, right? What you are doing, you should be able to explain it to other, and and vice versa. At least, that's what I have been able to do. What we do, I work with so many people in the organization from other areas, like project managers, people from technology, people from business, who do not know much about what we have been doing, right? So I may be great at my job, right? Doing all the reports accurately, filing all the reports on time. But if I'm not able to explain to them that what am I doing, they would not be able to understand. They would not be able to trust me or my team. So that's why I said, as you move up in your career, especially in the managerial positions, your communication skills become more important as compared to your technical skills. Now the next thing is be uncomfortable with the be comfortable with the uncomfortable. So that is, be adaptable to change. And again, I know it's human nature. Nobody wants to change, right? Everyone wants to do what they have been following. And primarily that's because, people have a fear of failure. It happens to me also, right? I'm not an exception. But one thing I have been able to change my perspective into thinking that, okay, if I am doing something new, whether I'm being forced to doing it or whether I'm doing it voluntarily, yes, there is a possibility that I could fail, but at least I would know something, right? I would learn something new in the process. So that's the mindset that has been able to help me become more resilient towards change. learn, as much as you can, and be mindful of the fact your learning does not stop when you finish your degree. It's going to be, you will be learning like, throughout your life, whether professionally or personally. Um, Most of the things that I do today, like 90% plus of the things, like, project work or technical assessment, regulatory assessments, they do not teach all that stuff in in BCom or in MBA, right? At least I did not study any of those things. So, but the reason I have been able to learn all that stuff because I was open to learning, and I learned as much as I could and as long as possible. I try to keep learning. The next thing is be open to learning from anyone. Right now, it's obvious that if someone is more experienced than you, more educated than you look up to them, you learn from them. But sometimes the learning can come from anyone, right? It can come from your juniors, it can come from your new colleagues. Like I still remember when I was tutoring people for CPA, sometimes they would give examples when we were going through a particular concept, and I was like, wow, I never thought of something like this. So that was insightful. So always be like, open to learning from others. um yeah, maybe I may be going something towards more on the philosophy sides, but again, since you asked me the question, but people should be doing, so I still share it. I think building genuine connection is very important, right? And that's what I think we as a society we lack a lot on it. Everyone is looking to build connections, right, or a network just to get material gains. I'm not against it, but again, that's not where the life ends. Most of my growth in life has come from people who I am not professionally connected to. So just as an example, like I have a friend, she and I have nothing in common professionally, and we did not go to the same school, we did not study the same uh, topics in school and whatnot. She's a medical doctor, and obviously I'm a banker. So she and I bonded over religion and spirituality. And I keep telling this to her, all the times that, the interactions that we have had on religion and spirituality, it has taken my life to another level, right? It has made me more calmer. It has made me more grateful. So that's what, I always feel, right? Your professional networks are really important, but then that should not be the only focus. Um, be happy for others, right? This is again one of my learnings, and it's human nature. Everyone wants to be the best. There is nothing, there is nothing wrong in it, and unfortunately, it comes with the cost that we become envious of success of other people. It's human nature. um at one point in time, early on in my career, maybe I was like that also, that I wanted to be better than everyone else. And then I realized that, okay, that's not how I want to live my life, right? I do not want to compete with people. I would rather collaborate with them, because whatever is destined for me, right, it is going to come to me no matter whether I try for it or not. It's going to happen. So why have a competition with others? And this is what I have seen, that if you're happy for others, if you cheer for them, they will do the same for you. So let's take our example, you and I, right? And before the podcast started, that's what you were talking, right? So we first interacted in 2020. You tried to teach me Visual Basics, and I miserably failed at it, and I was not surprised. But like I was happy, and if I remember correctly, at that time you were building your business, right? You were like in the initial stages, right? So, but now over the years, I have seen you do all these great things, going to all these big institutions, working with these big companies. And whenever you post anything on LinkedIn, I try to like, comment or like it, because I'm like genuinely happy for you. Like I'm not getting anything material, or tangible from that, but I'm genuinely happy that, hey, here is this guy who I have happened to know, and he's doing the great things. And people remember that. I'm pretty sure you remember that, hey, Sid is, I know him, he's posting these things, or commenting on my post and etc. So that's how you build your connection. Now it may not give you a tangible benefit. Like I did not know that, hey, if I'm commenting on a post from Havish, one day he should invite me on in podcasts. But here we are, right? So you don't
Yeah.
know where things would take you. And lastly, again, I'm talking more philosophically. And unfortunately, I've seen this a lot that people, especially the young people, they are like very stressed and distressed, right? I see like people in their teens and their 20s and saying that, hey, I'm stressed. And that's something that does not register in my mind. Like, when I was in that age, the only stress I had that, hey, whether my parents would beat me today or not, right? So, but yeah, they are stressed and because of, I don't know, whichever factor it is. But so that's why I think it is important for people to to be grateful for what they have. Yes, keep working hard, keep learning, keep doing the best you can, but be grateful for where you are. Because if you are not grateful, if you're not thankful for what you have today, you would not be grateful tomorrow when you have what you are missing today, right? And one of the ways that I do it is I pray, right? And I pray not to ask for something, but just to be grateful for what I have. So yeah, I mean, I think we are going on a totally different topic right now. But yeah, these are the few things that I have learned, in my journey over the years.
Amazing, Siddharth. And final question. And I really wanted to ask this before wrapping up. So you mentioned an interest in astronomy and astrophysics, and
Yeah.
uh, I don't want to ask the question in a professional manner, asking you something like, how does it impact you being a better manager? I just want to leave the question at that. You mentioned you have an interest in it. I would love to know a little bit more about it.
Wow, that's a really insightful question, and I have to actually give it some thought. Well, unfortunately, like astronomy, astrophysics, they are very different than regulatory reporting. I wish there was a
Huh.
direct connection that you could use one for the other, but at least at this point in time, that's not the case. But yeah, I mean, obviously there are a few learnings that I have had, and I would happily share that how that has helped me. But before we get to that, I'm going to share a very interesting story, which again I did not know is going to help me, right? So I have been interested in this astronomy and astrophysics for as long as I could remember. I'm terrible at calculus. Let's just get it straight. I cannot. If someone asks me to explain, derive E is equal to MC square, I cannot do it, right? So, but yeah, that's a different story. But yeah, I've always been interested, at least at a basic or high level, just to see what's going on in this world. So when I interviewed for my job at MUFG, my phone interview with my manager at that time, you will be surprised for the first 15 minutes of the interview. That's what we were talking about because he has similar interests, and we still, even though he has been retired for like 6 years now, we still share like any new thing that we found in these areas. So obviously that did not get me the job in reg reporting at MUFG, but there was a connection, right, that we built, a rapport that we built. And even after, I had joined the bank, whenever we were like, working late hours and you needed to take a break, he and I, would connect on the same topic. So obviously it has helped me in some way to, advance my career at another level. But yeah, coming back to your question, so a few things again, which I learned is like, that's what scientists do, right? They think out of the box. They hypothesize something that, hey, that may be true, or that may be how, the nature works. So they have a hypothesis, then they, do experiments to prove it. Sometimes they succeed, sometimes they fail. Same thing, that's what we try to do, in our job. We are doing a process for X number of years. Whenever we have some little downtime, I meet with my team, right? Ask them that, hey, we have been doing this. Please tell me why we have been doing this, right? Because things could have been happening long before I have been with the bank. Then we, try to dig into it, see if, if that still applies, or if things have changed that we can use to leverage off, and then, make improvements in our processes. Um, Challenge the status quo, right? I think it's very important. not because you don't trust what is being done or what is happening, but you want to look at it from a different perspective. And the example I always come up with is what Einstein did. People for 200 years thought, hey, gravity is a pull force. Earth is like, pulling everything down. And this guy came along. He said, no, that's probably not true. It's gravity is a curvature of space-time. So, what people had been following for 200 years, what Newton said, nobody thought to challenge it. But this guy came along and he challenged something, right? And it obviously changed the world of physics, once and for all, with the theory of relativity. Again, coming back to the same thing, we try to do the same thing in our work. If we are doing something that is not necessarily correct or incorrect, but there could be better ways of doing it. So let's try and do it. And one of the things that we have been able to do is the project that we work on. Every time when we have a project, we try to slip in like one of the changes that we have been trying to automate for years. Just hey, let's try to do it through a project, right? um, and that's where all it is coming from, challenge what's been out there. Keep looking for improvement, like don't settle for what you have been doing. And I'll still use the example of my scientific hero, Albert Einstein, right? He came up with the theory of special relativity in 1905, and that was groundbreaking, and he was like a rock star, right, overnight. He did not just stop there. He said, no, that's not how things work in real world. Let me just take it next step. Let me add gravity to it and see how things change. And it took him 10 years, right, to come up with general theory of relativity, which again took science to another, physics to another level. So that's where I got my inspiration from. Hey, let's keep looking for improvements, how we can do things better. So yeah, I mean, your question was really interesting, right? I honestly, I did not think of something like this, that hey, how can I connect these two things? But now since you asked me this question, it gave me like perspective to try to connect. And I hope I was able to like share something like learning from my interest in science with the work I do.
No, absolutely. I think that was a very nicely way of putting it, Siddharth. And I think that's also a nice, pretty way of ending a great conversation. A lot of things we spoke about, I am sure this will be of immense benefit to people at different stages of their life cycle. Invariably, I've realized over the last few podcasts that we do end up talking philosophically. And I don't think that's contra to talking professionally. I think it is one, right? I don't like to draw that line between work and life. Not to say that you have to be a workaholic and not think about life, but it's one thing, right? And you have to make one benefit the other rather than trying to fight off against each other. I think if they're able to aid each other, I think nothing like it. So once again, Siddharth, thank you so much for taking out the time. I had an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure everybody who listens to this would also benefit immensely from this.
Well, Havish, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the time you have taken to allow me to share my insight and my learnings. And I really do hope it does help at least one person.
I'm sure it will. Thank you, Siddharth.
Thank you, Havish. Have a good one.